just to make sure. All right. Actually, that's one thing I gotta remember to do. Change the view.
It's changing, huh?
Yeah, because otherwise it's my laptop view is different. All right, let's record. Oh, okay. Hi guys, welcome. Welcome. Can you please? Hello. Oh, that's cool. I like it. I wave this way and then I wave that. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate all you guys' time and energy and effort that you guys drive all the way out to the middle of nowhere in between Ubud and Canggu to be here. Thank you. My name is Sim, like a SIM card. And today we're going to be talking about something that I've had a lot of questions about. You wanted me to explain my reasoning, like how dare I make such risky investments as Ripple because it's a shitcoin. So I felt like it's a good idea to present at least everything that I've found about it so that you can make your own decisions. But before we do any of that stuff, we're gonna go around the room. 15 seconds to say your name and why are you investing in crypto? And where is it stored and your private keys?
And seed phrase.
I need you to text me your private keys, and other than that, we'll be done. My name is Sim, and the reason why I'm investing in crypto is because I can see that this is the next stage of the development of the world, and there are things being built out right now which will be the basis of the next 100 years of development for the world, and I want to be at the forefront of that. It's like oil and electricity being invented again.
Connor, crypto is just the biggest investment opportunity of a lifetime or generation. It's huge.
Michael, and just financial freedom.
Hi, I'm Wesley, and yeah, sama, basically creating wealth.
Hi, my name is Led, and I'm investing in crypto to make money and see what's up. It's interesting sphere to be in. Thank you.
I'm Sarah, and yeah, just total freedom, really. I don't see anything else that can give you that kind of freedom.
My name is Robert Kent, freedom and to just co-create with like-minded beings.
Hi, my name is Julia, and I just believe in your world.
Yeah, hello, my name is Orden, and I'm investing for financial freedom as well.
Hello, my name is Nick, and I just think that this is the best and most fun thing that I've come across in, I don't want to say how many years.
Hi, my name's Quab. Yeah, I looked at crypto a couple of years back, and yeah, the more I look into it, it just seems like a really good thing to be involved with. And yeah, I want to make some money.
Hi, my name is Pierre. I don't know. I just like to meet interesting people, like you can do here every time you come here every week. No?
Hey, my name is Chance. I find crypto extremely fascinating. It's allowed me to stop working a normal job, and yeah, just creating wealth around me and my family. It's like an amazing opportunity to shift paradigms, and that the banking system is gonna most likely collapse. So I want to be ready for it.
Hi, I'm Nadia. I'm still learning, and I think it's exciting, and it's a lot of opportunities, and it's new era, and I want to participate.
Hi, I'm William, and I cannot help stop beating myself up for not having invested earlier. And it's like this FOMO, situation now, and like I've seen everything just skyrocket, and yeah, it's just frustrating.
My name is Brett, and I'm here because I want to have financial freedom, but also learn the current business to help it grow.
My name is Umnia. Yeah, freedom, and to be able to express myself fully in what I do in my life. And to do that, I need a shit ton of money. So yeah.
Hey, I'm Jonna, and I just want to ditto everything everyone else said. The freedom, not being able to have a 9-to-5 job and having more of that kind of vibe, and then using the wealth that I intend to generate to give back in some form or fashion.
I'm Tyler, and I guess I'm into crypto just to protect myself against inflation and rising cost of living.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sabina. Nice to meet you all. Hi. Yeah, I'm just interested in crypto somehow. I still can't explain why, but something attracts that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Duke. I'm investing in crypto because you told me to. And no, I think that's just the future.
I appreciate the review. So, you know, we're looking at things from all different perspectives. Everybody has their own viewpoint on how you look at these things. What I'm about to present today is my personal viewpoint. It should not be your investment thesis. Like, you know, I've gained my financial freedom. Like you know, I've gotten to a point where like I don't have to worry about what I used to worry about 2 years ago, 4 years ago. So when you're coming from that kind of place, you go into a different strategy, right? There's people who are on that journey. There's people who are starting that journey. There's people who are, you know, just getting introduced to starting that process that might happen over the next 4 years. So do not take everything I'm saying today as the thing that you're gonna do, because you're not me, you're not in my situation. You know, I've been in all of these situations, and I've been on this journey for a very long period of time. And each kind of year almost, I've had to switch the way that I was playing the game, because that's important, and you're gonna have to go through these shifts. But what I'm about to present today is just one piece of what I've learned about Ripple. So before we even get started, I'm gonna pull up my notes. I'm gonna preface everything with this. Ripple is not the best investment opportunity out there. This year, there are thousands of other coins that have outperformed it, hands down. Shiba Inu would have made you way more money if you simply just put $100 into it than putting $100,000 into Ripple, okay? If you think that this is the reason why you're just gonna go buy this coin that's about to make you a lot of money, that's not why we're here. We don't do that, right? You gotta make decisions on your own if this is something you wanna make part of your portfolio, but even then, if you do it just because I'm saying it, you're playing the game wrong. Don't just listen to people and go do things. That's how you get scammed into the, you know, out of the 13,000 coins, like 8,000 of them are scams meant to scam you out of money, and that's how you get into that process, okay? So, let's zoom out a little bit. I always like to zoom out and then come in to my point, because I like to talk a lot. So, when I said I'm investing in crypto because I see base level technologies being developed which are going to run the future of the world, I stick to that thesis. That's what I'm good at. You know, that's why I'm not in the DeFi world, because that's not my forte. You know, I'd be playing against people who are much more capable than me, and I'm focusing on finding the technologies that I can provably say are going to be the base layer for the next 100 years. Because my plan is 100 years. You know, I'm planning on living beyond 100. You should all plan to live beyond 100. We're about to go into transhumanism. It's like living beyond 100 isn't going to be that big of a deal, you know. So, I mean, I'm risky, so I might just die at in 10 years or something. But the point is, I'm trying to live to 100. My thesis, my investment plan focuses decades out, and I'm trying to protect my wealth and find opportunities which I know are going to be great for the next 10, 20, 30 years minimum, but they're going to be the basis of running in the next 100 years. So when you look back, you have to then think, okay, what ran the world for the past 100 years? Oil, electricity, internet, obviously. There were these very base level technologies that came out that if you were just there, if you were one of the first people who got involved in the oil industry doing whatever, generational wealth. If you were one of the first people to get involved in the electricity industry, generational wealth. If you were the first one to get involved in microcomputing, generational wealth. If you're the first, one of the first to get involved in internet, generational wealth. You know, there's these opportunities that come around once in a generation, but this one's going to be actually once in at least a century, at least, probably even more than that, where every single process in the world is about to be reinvented and put onto the blockchain. Okay, so you can pick your favorites, get involved, as long as you stay in your genius zone and you're hitting the nail on the head. You're one of the first ones out there. You're one of the 1% of the world that's actually doing this. So you almost can't miss. Just don't lose your money in the process. Okay, so for me, that was a few different things. I realized, okay, Bitcoin is the basis of blockchain. It's just not the basis. It's the beta test of a blockchain. That's how I look at it. It was just a test. Turn on a bunch of computers that run an accounting book on top that has very few properties built inside of it. 21 million will ever exist. You know, half will start to get produced every 4 years, and some cryptography, and then you release it, right? For some people, that is a great investment thesis. If you're a Michael Saylor guy, you're like, look, I just want the most basic, pure version of blockchain, and I'm going to invest in that, and I'm going to put $7 billion of, $6.5 billion of debt and $500 million of our own money into it, because I know for the next 10 years, this thing is going to stay. And I agree with that, For me, I was looking, because I'm a guy who's kind of looked at the world in a revolutionary manner. I was looking for what's the next revolution that's guaranteed on the horizon. And that's kind of what you talked about. There's monetary inflation going on, and the Bretton Woods monetary system that's existed for the past 100 years is at the end of its run. The banks are going to collapse because they're all based on debt. There's too much debt, and there's nobody to pay the debt. So that causes defaults, and that causes a collapse of the old banking system. And this happens every 100 years. This happened in 1930, where all the banks started using the Bretton Woods system, which set the dollar at the center of all the currencies. All the values of the currencies were tied to the dollar, and the dollar's value was tied to the gold. And that's the Bretton Woods system that's run for 100 years. It's created all this prosperity around us. But when you actually do the calculation on that system, it keeps inflating in debt. And now we're getting to a point where we're at the last 10 years of that system. Okay. So for me, I was like, what's the new system? What's the next system? People thought Bitcoin is going to be the new payment terminal, payment gateway, or the payment rails, let's call it. Money moves on payment rails. All rails mean is like it's a path for money to flow around the world. If a third of the world started properly using Bitcoin, we would need more energy than the entire world has to run the Bitcoin network. So that's not going to happen. Mathematically, you simply can't. And they're just the tokenomics of it are set up in a way so that the world is not meant to own Bitcoin. One day it'll be too expensive for the average person to own, and that's about to happen within the next 10 years, as you're watching it today. It's proof of work, right? And it's going to stay proof of work. You can't change it, otherwise you mess up the Bitcoininess of it, right? It's energy that's turned into a digital asset, like Michael Saylor says it. So I was looking for, what can I find? What technology can I find that is going to be the base layer of that new banking system? Because for me, the most amount of money is in the banking system. It's in asset classes, which are controlled by bankers, or Wall Street bankers, you can call them. But that's where most amount of the money is. The cash we have in our pockets is like less than 10% of the actual money that exists out there, or the value that exists out there. So when I ran that analysis, I always come from a place of like, if you want to create the new banking system, you got to be a banker. Sim can come up with the best blockchain that's going to revolutionize and all this stuff, but if you ain't bankers, you don't even have the option to go in and do that stuff. You have to be part of that club to do it. So on that journey, I found this project, Ripple. And now Ripple is a company. The name Ripple is from a company. It's a privately owned entity, and they have a token called XRP. Those two things are separate. Sometimes you'll hear us talk about Ripple. Ripple's doing this, Ripple's being sued. The XRP is the token that is it's a public blockchain created by Ripple, and it's controlled in some capacity by Ripple, but those two things are separate. So now I'll even start off with Ripple, the company, is being sued today. So if you think that you're going to go buy this and get rich tomorrow, Ripple, the company, has a lawsuit against it because they're saying that this XRP token is a security. I'm of the mindset it's not. When you're following the lawsuit, that's not, doesn't look like that's going to happen, but there's a massive risk that they could lose that lawsuit and this token could be classified as security, which would ruin everything that I'm about to explain. Okay, so that's a huge risk. But what happened in 2004 was a new banking standard was announced, because the old system that we're talking about, this Bretton Woods 100-year system, it runs on private institutions holding value. They're called banks, but they're also called stock exchanges and brokerages and you name it. They hold the actual value, but these private entities hold all of the value. For them to transact value, I mean, these private entities were run by people up until very recently, until the internet. People would have to call each other and verify, hey, I got to move $100 million, and then somebody on the other side would verify that it's there, and then the money gets moved. So people were involved in the process. When the internet came out, that process got digitized to some capacity through companies like Swift, which moves $5 trillion of value a day, where they came up with a rudimentary messaging system that would allow you to move money around, move large amounts of money, and global commerce was made a little bit simpler, but it's still people being involved in the process, very much so. And people have a tendency of being inefficient, right? So now let's imagine I want to move $100 million to China. I'm in Singapore and I want to move $100 million to China to buy some steel that's going to be shipped to the US, and then I'm going to create a product, right? I don't just call China and go, here's the $100 million. The Chinese give me an invoice. I take it to my bank in Singapore. I ask them to send $100 million. The $100 million from my bank account gets authorized by a party, a bigger bank in Singapore, who has a partner in the US. Remember, you're sending it to China. The US has nothing to do with it, but they have a partner in New York and US, and that partner, which is probably JP Morgan or Citi or one of the bigger banks, that partner authorizes that you've custodied the $100 million on this side. They release $100 million they basically authorize $100 million to be released from a pool that they have in China, because that big bank has a bunch of money sitting in China in Chinese yuan, and they authorize that process. Then Chinese vet that transaction, and the Chinese bank then converts they basically just have yuan sitting there, so they take the yuan and then they give it to the vendor, and then your steel starts to get shipped. Okay, so that process has a bunch of banks involved, and the bunch of banks are making a ton of money, right? And it takes 5 days or 7 days to transfer and go through. Crypto is supposed to be the technology that takes away all those banks, takes away all those people, and allows the money to move seamlessly. You know, Bitcoin was supposed to be the one that allows you to move it within minutes, now a half an hour or an hour, right? But when you look at the fundamentals, Bitcoin simply isn't meant to do that. Its tokenomics are not set up in the right way. In 2004, a new messaging standard comes out called the ISO 20022 messaging standard. It is the language that each one of these partners in this chain have to speak in order for money to move efficiently and in a digitized manner. Okay, that's step number one. That once everybody starts speaking this language, every bank and every central bank and every company and everybody starts speaking this one language, then all these people won't have to vet stuff. First of all, we'll be able to move money. You know, it'll still go to US and it'll still go to China, and there's still money sitting there in the bank in China that needs to be held there for this process to happen. But at least when I set a request to send it, it gets pinged to the US and then it gets pinged to China, and then China is able to release that money. So you could speed up the process of commerce happening. If it doesn't take days for that to happen, then, you know, commerce can speed up a lot more. Right now, that money still has to be sitting there in China. So imagine that bank has trillions of dollars sitting in China, hundreds of billions of dollars sitting in Uganda, hundreds of billions of dollars sitting in Indonesia. There's about $5 trillion of money that just sits around waiting for somebody to use it. That's the only way our banking system runs. Now, if we're inflating the currency supply, you know, it costs me 100 million to buy that thing once. Next time it's 150 million. Next time it's 10 years, it'll be $1 billion. So I need to move more and more larger and larger numbers of money. So that means that pool of money that's sitting there in these countries needs to grow larger and larger because I'm transferring more and more. Now it's getting to a point where it's just creating a liquidity crisis. Like either commerce has to be slowed down, either the world has to be shut down, which is kind of what you're seeing around you. It's not a coincidence that they hit the red light on the economy right when they did. Or I have to pump so much money into the system so that these liquidity pools can actually grow, or I have to make sure there's no inflation. None of those options are happening. I mean, the closest option is, hitting a red light. And again, this is my opinion now. This is my approximation of what they've done in order to control the complete collapse of this whole system. But the point is, we do know that right now and this was about 2 years ago, about $5 trillion of money has to sit around for this process to happen. In 2012, a company called Ripple comes along that comes up with solutions to all of these problems, right? And it says, okay, well, we're going to create a token called XRP. Well, technically, another company created the token and gifted it to Ripple, but let's just say Ripple has a token called XRP, which allows, first of all, live communication. So when I'm sending A to B, I can communicate live. I can say, I'm about to send you this much. How much is the yuan worth? Notify the Chinese authorities, notify the US tax authorities, notify everybody using the ISO 20022 system. And then the money gets sent live. And the way that it gets sent is not through New York. It gets, the person on this side buys a certain amount of Ripple. And Ripple itself, the value of Ripple, the value of XRP itself is the liquidity pool that's sitting in the middle. So you no longer need hundreds of trillions or trillions of dollars sitting around for this process to happen. On the other side, the other partner is able to take the Ripple and convert it into yuan and instantly, within 5 seconds, move that money. Okay? That's the technology that came out. So now let me go through these notes. Okay? Right now, today, Swift sends about $5 trillion a day. That's $1.5 quadrillion in a year of transfers that happen simply between countries. Then imagine how many, and I tried to find good stats on it and I couldn't, but there's hundreds of trillions of dollars of transfers that happen in between countries and businesses. And remember, in order for a transfer to happen, money gets sent there and then they transfer it somewhere else and they transfer it somewhere else. Each one of those transfers, banks make money. That's why banks are the richest entities on the planet. Right now, what we're seeing is cryptocurrencies come out, which are creating all these new modalities of creating value. Bitcoin is like digital gold, Ethereum is like a new internet, which you can build stuff on top of. So is Solana, and then there's a million apps being built on top. Polkadot comes out and lets you build individualized blockchains that you can build out. And then there's 13,000 other ones that are all generating value. Now that value needs to move around too, and then it needs to interact with the traditional banking system. And if any of you have dealt with the banking system when it relates to crypto, you know how much of a pain in the ass it is to get your money out of the banking system and put it into crypto. And then you realize how big of a pain in the ass it is to take a large amount of money and put it back into your banking, because right now we still have to go through this shitty old system. Ripple also said, we will create, this XRP will be something called an interledger protocol. So it'll sit in between the different cryptos. One, it's sitting in between the banks and the central banks, and then it's going to be sitting between the bank and the business. Then they want to sit between the business and the customer, but they also want to sit between the banks and all of crypto, and in between each one of the cryptos. It's an interledger system. So for me, this was something I was like, okay, well, I don't know which crypto is going to survive. Most of them aren't. Statistically speaking, over 90% of them are going to die within the next 10 years because that's just how technology works. But the interledger systems will survive, or should survive, because the only ones that will be allowed to play that part are the ones that are fully authorized, that are fully legal, that are fully regulated. And we're going to look into the details of who's involved in this process to really give me confidence that this is the one. But interledger systems sit in between cryptos, but also most of the value isn't even in banks. Most of the value is in assets. It's in real estate, commodities, stocks, derivatives, art. precious metals, just commodities. But those silos are all sitting in, there's $1 quadrillion sitting in derivatives, and there's like hundreds of trillions of dollars sitting in stocks and hundreds of trillions of dollars sitting in real estate, which also can't move. If you want to take your value from real estate and put it back into your bank account, good luck, 6-month process. In Indonesia, good luck, lawyers, governments, scams, all this stuff. So this system is built, custom built to sit in between even those. It's meant to connect the stock exchange and the derivatives exchange to the tokenized blockchain version of real estate in Indonesia. So if I want to convert my stocks into real estate, I should be able to just do that with smart contracts, and it'll be verifiable. It'll be 100% guaranteed to happen the way that I'm expecting it to happen. So going back to my thesis for why I'm investing in things, I want the base layer that I know is going to run the future, right? And so when I looked at what do I want to accrue, kind of like what you're doing, I realized I don't want to accrue Bitcoin. Because one, I'm already late to that party. But secondly, if everybody's accruing Bitcoin, I let everybody accrue Bitcoin. Some of the companies have started to accrue Ether. That's their, they're denominating everything in Ether. Cool, that's a great thesis for them. For me, I was like, I want to accrue and denominate my wealth in a denominator which is going to be the base layer for global transactions, which to me is the closest thing to replacing the US dollar as the reserve currency. So when I said, the money is moving from here to US and China, the reason why that has to happen is because global commerce has to happen in the US dollar. The US dollar is the reserve currency of the world. That is about to end, because if they could just keep inflating US dollars, trust is now being lost in the US dollars, and countries have started to transact in other currencies. So when you actually read the plan from the bankers, they've said we're going to be creating new neutral global reserve currencies that will sit in between global commerce. And the single best one that serves that use case is Ripple. And we're going to go into the details of why specifically I see that as being being the case, because they've also built out now something called Ripple Net, which is the network of people who are connected together. They're connecting together, I think, over now, last we know, it's about 3,000 financial institutions, plus the plan is to eventually have all the cryptos connected to this. And you probably think, no, I'm living in a decentralized world. We're going to be decentralized. We're going to be, nobody can touch us. These systems are going to sit in between your, DeFi world and the banking system. You won't be able to spend your DeFi token directly on coffee. You'll need to go through the banking system and have legitimate off-ramps to go into the banking system, and that's where they're going to control the transfers. And this is the system, in my approximation and in my research, is the most likely one to actually make that happen. Now, it's also extremely energy efficient. It takes a fraction of a penny to do these transfers. It has the capacity it has the throughput to be able to run the entire world transactions, no problem. It is scalable. So in that process, I'm like, yeah. And you don't need the internet to be able to transfer value back and forth, which is huge, right? I don't know, he just told me about it. I mean, I heard about this. I don't know exactly how that works.
I couldn't tell you how it's done, but I've already read about it.
I've read about it too. I don't know how it works. Like yeah. The ledger can be updated off net, which is, there's going to be processes which will require that as one of the options.
So in other words, when the country shuts down, you can still transfer $100 if you need to.
No. That's a really good point. Even if the country shuts down, even if the banking system shuts down, the value transaction system does not go away. It's secured against power outages in 99% of the world, because they're running some of it in like nuclear grade secured, backed up solar flare proof bunkers. So these aren't newbies, and we're going to look at who these people are that are running this stuff, right? So okay, I'm seeing something that has all of the properties of being that global reserve currency. First of all, they have a patent on the process of creating that pool in the middle. That pool in the middle is one of the biggest problems banking has. They do not like to let over $5 trillion sit around. The banking system hates it because they know these guys just printed 40% of the money supply in the last 2 years. That means my 5 trillion is now worth 3 trillion. Right? The purchasing power of that money is going away, but they have to keep it there because that's the only way that they can move money. So they hate it, and it's been a huge problem. Then they hate the US global reserve currency because they can just one day change regulations and be like, guess what? Biden feels like printing $1 trillion. Yes, let's print it and let's give it to ourselves. That's why the US is wealthy the way that it is, and they've taken the wealth of nations and put it to themselves because they control the money supply. So the people hate that. This thing, first of all, is built, custom built to serve that use case. And yes, the US, we're at the end of the US empire. If this surprises you, every empire ends. The US has only been here for like 50 years. Remember the British used to run the world? How are the British looking? Lots of countries run it. The Portuguese used to run it, then the Dutch used to run it. These global reserve currencies were all these countries. Now you're probably like, you can't even point them out on a map sometimes, if you're American especially. It's like, we can't point anything out on a map. So you know, this is not unexpected. This demise of currencies is a 100% hit rate. 100% of every fiat currency that's ever existed went to zero. Okay, and the people who were living in it never thought it would go to zero. Germany did not think the Deutsche Mark would become worthless. They'd have to shovel, you know, they'd have to take barrels of it to get to the point that they could buy bread. Indonesia did not think that 1,000,000 rupiah would buy a meal. I mean, it's a good meal, but like 1,000,000 rupiah would buy a meal. 1,000,000 rupiah used to buy this whole place, but it's happened and we're carrying them in our pockets. So expect that same process to play out. So the US is on the way out. This thing is custom built to serve the use case and has the patent is the only one allowed to have the patent on fixing one of the biggest problems in banking, which is that liquidity pool problem. Because if things are denominated in US dollars and you need to move US dollars, then in the end, I have to keep printing more US dollar and putting it into this pool just to be able to serve that use case, because there aren't enough US dollars to be able to serve it as I'm inflating the money supply. That's the other reason why cryptocurrencies are just shooting off to the moon. You know, companies used to go 1 billion, then 2 billion, then 3 billion, then 4 billion. That's how their valuations grew. Cryptocurrencies go 1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, trillion, 10 trillion, 100 trillion. And that's what you're going to watch happen. Now all of a sudden, Bitcoin in 10 years is bigger than Tesla. It's bigger than, it's the 13th biggest currency in the world. And those currencies have had, you know, 100 years to run. So it's happening because they are inflating way faster than the denominator that we're using, which is the US dollar. And their actual value is much higher. So what you actually need is you need an asset. You don't need dollars to move dollars around. What you need is an asset so that, you know, as you print more dollars, this asset just keeps going up in value, in dollar denominated value, let's say. You know, that's why Bitcoin just keeps going up. But at some point, Bitcoin will limit in how many dollars it's worth, how much value it's worth. Like we're expecting that once it gets up to the level of buying like a private island, it won't be able to buy like a country, one Bitcoin. But it's going to get to the level of buying a private island. That's the approximation. But the dollar denominated value will just keep going up. One day it'll be worth 10 million, then it'll be worth 100 million, like 30, 40 years, $100 million will be like 100 million rupiah. Probably not, it'll be like 100 billion rupiah, right? But the point is you need an asset that inflates as the currencies are inflating, and that asset allows the global commerce to happen. And it, you know, if you need to move $100 billion, it becomes worth more to actually move that money around. I'm simplifying that process, but this is one of the assets that's doing that. And the rest of the cryptos you're invested in are, if they survive, are also going to be similar assets. They're assets that inflate against the currency supply. And what we're seeing develop is a dual world where global commerce and bankers will be allowed to interact and transact in assets. Okay? Those assets will infinitely inflate against the currency supply. Anybody who was left in the dollar world, who stayed in the bank account because they thought they had $1 million and that was a lot, they will just keep printing more dollars. The dollars will become worthless, and eventually they'll have central bank digital currencies, which will keep doing this process going forward. So the accrual of wealth in currency is about to become impossible within the next 10 years. It's already starting to. If you're sitting in currency, 40% of your purchasing power was gone within the last 2 years, but you didn't even notice. They just took a 40% tax on you, but you think you still have the $1 million in your bank account. But the person who put it into cryptocurrency actually got the dollar go up, the number go up, but the actual value also went up because it's something that's useful, right? So the other reason why this technology is so interesting to me is because when I looked into the details of, it's taken me over a decade to learn the finer details of how money moves around and what are the rails, and I'm an electronics engineer, so I even studied like the technology itself and how it moves. It became patently obvious their plan is not to just completely come up with a new system and completely revamp everything and screw over the way that things have been done. It's taken a long time to come up with this fine balance of how things are done. So what you need is you need a central bank, because the central bank issues currency and gives it to the banks. And the banks take that currency and use it as a reserve to issue debt. And they're the ones who create most of the money in the world. You also need central banks and banks to be able to control that process, control accounts, control transfers, control deposits. You need businesses to have individualized control to a point, but not enough that they can mess with what the bank's control is. And now we're seeing a global governance develop, which is NGOs, which have power above the central banks of countries. The IMF, the World Bank, World Economic Forum in an auxiliary way, Bank of International Settlements. That's the biggest bank in the world. That's a central bank of central banks. So what you need is a structure where the central bank of central banks can control monetary policy in the world. The central bank of a country controls how much dollars or currency gets issued in that country according to a bigger plan. That issued country is given to banks, and the banks are controlling how much debt gets generated against it. And that's how you can control each one of the pieces of the economy and make sure it runs beautifully, but centrally planned. XRP and RippleNet are coded to only work when that system is the way it is. You need a central authority above central banks. You need a central bank authority in the country. Then the accounts are controlled below that by controlling authorities who then have the webs of customers underneath them. And it's not a coincidence that that's exactly how the banking system is laid out, and this technology is exactly laid out to kind of layer on top of the banking system and serve each one of the use cases, plus the pool in the middle to be able to transact money, infinite amounts of money, without having to worry about it. So now, when I saw all of that, it clicked for me like, this is the one. They have the patent on doing this stuff. And then I was like, wait, but can they do it? Bunch of other cryptos are like, we got a beautiful technology. We're gonna ease global payments and transfers. So then I went did the fundamentals on like, who is running this? Who created this? Who are behind it? Because they're they need to be titans of the globe in order for this to happen. So then I realized they're backed by Google. Peter Thiel was one of the first investors. He's the one who started PayPal, Facebook, Palantir, if you know who that is. Andreessen Horowitz, who's a massive investor who created Skype, and he's in so many different projects. He was one of the original investors. Swift, the guys who are doing this right now, who you think would be their competitor, are also auxiliary invested into Ripple. They have a controlling interest in it. And initially it was Santander Bank and SBI Asia. These are yeah, like they're collaborating on the launch, and they're going to be like, and when you actually look into the details of the people that are invested in Swift and invested in Ripple, it's the same people, right? But SBI, so these were the initial investors, right? So that already gave some credence to the idea that these guys are the ones who are going to run it. But then I'm a conspiracy theorist, so then I went and searched up all their board members, and this is, if you're really doing research on a project, this is how deep you should really go if it's something that you're going to be invested in very long, because you should search who the person is, what connections do they have, who the controlling interests are, and all that stuff, and that'll really tell you, is this somewhere where I want to keep my value for the next 30 years, right? So the CEO of Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, is one of the biggest members of the World Economic Forum. He literally writes their papers on cryptocurrency. And he's connected and the World Economic Forum runs the world. Anything with the world in front of it is now going to be the government that we all answer to. The World Health Organization said, And I was like, They're like, right? And we went, oh, okay. Cool, man. Where do you want me to sign up, right? So World Economic Forum controls the economy of the world. World Bank controls how long these things go and what loans go to what places. If the country doesn't cooperate, no more loans for you. Your economy go bye-bye, you know? International Monetary Fund is another, they don't have a W, but like they're another. So these NGOs that control the world are gonna be the ones that actually run this whole system. So when I saw that the CEO is one of the biggest guys in World Economic Forum, I was like, okay, cool. He's one of the banksters. We like to lovingly call them banksters, right? Chris Larsen, one of the executive chairmen, was on the high-level advisory group in the International Monetary Fund and HSBC's Technology Advisory Board, which is one of the 3 biggest banks in the world. Susan Athey, a senior economic consultant, she used to be a consultant for Ripple, and she's a board member now. She's from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I know. We don't like those people, but they run the world, you know? And when you have people coming from these organizations, that just tells you how deep this rabbit hole goes and how much controlling interest they have. Ken Kurson is a director who's from the Trump family. He's closely related with the Trump family. And that guy didn't become the president by accident. They have a lot of controlling power. Gene Sperling, one of the board members, was the economic advisor to Hillary Clinton and is the National Economic Council director and was the economic advisor to Clinton and Obama. So this is the guy that advised on the monetary policy to Obama and you know, the Democrats, basically. David Schwartz, the genius of Ripple, built the cryptography for the NSA. And if you think the NSA does not run the entire internet, you're completely misunderstanding how this whole thing plays. I'm not saying they run the entire internet, they're one of the pieces of the controls that control which technologies get developed when. Do you know who created the internet? DARPA. This is a defense research arm of the US military. Most people don't go back that far, but they created it as a military device, and then they released it to us. DARPA. D-A-R-P-A. And actually, side note, you know what SMART is? SMART is actually a type of, we call these smartphones and we like love them. SMART is actually a type of weapons technology where they use frequencies to be able to cook people from within. I mean, if you just Google it, it's all there. It's a weapons technology, and that research is what developed the cell phone that's in your hand today. So do your own research on all these things. But the military and the army and these guys run everything. And when I saw that the guy who is like one of the biggest developers was basically the core of Ripple, he came from the NSA and he built their cryptography. So, you know, he's connected deeper than we can think about. Ripple is literally listed on the World Economic Forum's website and on their own documents as the technology that they're going to use to build the future. It's open, it's there. Ripple and Chainlink are 2 that are confirmed, that are in their own documents. So when this lawsuit's happening, people go like, oh my God, they're being sued, they're about to go down. I see it as they're being sued, and when you follow the lawsuit, you're seeing that they're actually being given regulatory clarity. Because the way you give one crypto regulatory clarity is you sue them and then they settle or they win the lawsuit, and then officially they're outside of the purview of the legal system, right? Susan Athey, I noted it down there. Susan Athey joined the Ripple Mafia shortly after attending the Bilderberg Group in 2013. So Bilderberg Group is another group of elites that control the entire world. If you know who that is, great. If you don't know, they run the world. When we say they are one of the arms of they, right? So she's from the Bilderberg Group. Great, check out the Bilderberg Group. Peter Thiel, one of the early Ripple investors, is also from the Bilderberg Group. Bill Clinton is closely related to many of the events that happen at Ripple. Ben Bernanke, the former Federal Reserve chairman, is one of the speakers that speaks for them and is again involved in this process. Miguel Valles is from the CME Group, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. CME is where the futures are being traded for Bitcoin. And most of the futures or a large amount of the futures get traded in the US. Paul Dwyer is a board member of the Money Services Business Association. And MSBA works directly with the SEC, who are now suing these guys apparently, to be able to do this stuff. Edmund de Rothschild, you know I had to go there. Edmund de Rothschild, his fund owns a part of Ripple through SBI Holdings. So great, now we got Rothschild on the board, okay? The Rockefeller Foundation is working with Ripple. Now we got Rockefellers on that. So that's every single name that runs the world. Every organization that runs the world, every banking cartel that controls every single thing that you do, the US government, and I mean, and now here's the banks. Bank of America, SBI, SBI Asia, SBI Global, American Express, Santander, World Economic Forum, Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank of central banks, the US Federal Reserve, the Central Bank of Japan, the Central Bank of Saudi Arabia, the Bank of England, Royal Bank of Canada, and I literally have too long of a list, I'm not gonna bore you with it. But every single big player in the world is invested directly in this project, okay? Bank of everywhere. Bank of Bhutan just signed up, but many of them are actually, so we're gonna get to this, but many of them are actually doing stuff in secret, which they're not allowed to disclose yet because you would go out and buy this shit. You know, if you're an American, you're not allowed to buy it. They literally took it off of all the exchanges right when the lawsuit came out, which is not how you do things. You wait for something to be outlawed before you take it off. But you know, America, the empire of America is ending, so the last thing they want is for them to get involved in a project which is going to be running the banking system of the world. Over 350 banks that we know of, over 3,000 financial institutions in 150 countries with 120 plus currencies that are working on this. So when I see all of that, it makes me tickle inside, because that is so many green lights for me to be like, show me another project that's like that. Show me another project that has, you know, is actually older than Ethereum. It's actually flipped the market cap of Ethereum before. That has all of this backing, that has all these things. That's like pennies on the dollar cheap. That's at a quarter away from its all-time high from 2017, about a quarter away. It's a little bit farther now. And so now that's just the banking part of it, right? So it's actually built from the ground up to serve all of these use cases. And then once it has regulatory clarity and the new banking system goes live, it's one of the few, it's like there's a 5 or 6 ISO 20022 compatible cryptos out there. It's one of them. The other ones are Algorand, XLM is not actually, XDC, there's like 2 more that I forgot. They are now releasing something called federated sidechains, which will allow you to run a whole blockchain separately and settle on the Ripple layer, which is exactly what Polkadot is trying to do. But this is going to let you hook directly up into the banking system and settle in the asset that's going to be running the world, okay? Ripple is building ERC20 compatible smart contracts to transition all of DeFi to Ripple sideways. So that's another reason why I look at these things as beta tests, because you know, as the engineer part of me is like, well, I'm not just going to release the technology to the world and that's going to be my beta test. I'm going to release a basic version of it first. Once it works, then the improved version gets released. Once that works, then I basically sideload all of that into another system, and then that's where I would actually run the world. So it makes sense that Ethereum is where most of DeFi is running today. But as soon as you tell me Ethereum can run for pennies on the dollar transaction fees and hook directly up into the banking system, and you don't have to have interoperability layers in between, and it can run on Ripple, who's certified and allowed to run all this stuff, you know, I can see a lot of DeFi transitioning, and then the actual institutional grade DeFi will happen on, again, in my approximation, will happen on this chain. Flare allows wrapped assets of any kind. So synthetic assets is one of the biggest reasons why we're limited from investing in things. Synthetic assets allows me to be able to turn this place into tokens that are synthetic versions or wrapped versions of this real estate, but on the blockchain. Right now, that isn't centralized in a way for all of those assets to show up. Ripple Flare which is a part of Ripple is building that. Flare Finance will run DeFi, and then they're working with central banks to pilot CBDCs on a private ledger, and that's central bank digital currencies, which are, remember I said there's currencies and then there's assets. So they're basically involved in every single one of those processes, and they're secretively doing this in the background. And they literally have an app to create CBDCs. So you can just go and create your own thing, right? So why shouldn't you go out and buy it? Because you don't know that much about it, right? This isn't a plan for if you want to make the most amount of money, so think about this. These assets are exponential, remember? So they go from cents to dollars, dollars to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 100,000. That's their growth curve. Bitcoin did that 10 years ago, right? Solana is doing it this year. Solana's already done 170x. Ripple's been here for 2 cycles. It had that insane many hundreds of multiples growth the first cycle, and then last cycle it did 360 times. So don't expect it to go 100 times from here. There isn't enough money in the world to do, not money in the world, but there just isn't enough. The market cap is high enough that it's not going to do that. So if you're interested in making the most amount of money and you're investing a little bit, this isn't the place that you should be looking. It is going to have great growth potential. Within the next 10 years, I still see it 100xing, more than 100xing. When you actually look at how much dollar denominated value does it have to have that needs to be part of that pool to actually transact the entire world's currency supply at the rate that they're inflating it, a $1,000 Ripple is not out of the question. In 30 years, a $10,000 Ripple is like almost in the cards, almost guaranteed, because they're going to have to inflate the currency supply going up. But that's 30 years from now. And I said, $1,000 10 years from now is my target, because I'm aiming for that. So if you are the type of person where you understand all of this and that's how you're playing the game, then welcome to the club. Then you should get that shit. Tonight, the Ripple Swell event starts, which, I'm not saying this is not financial advice, but that's an event where they announce a lot of good news and Ripple's actually poised to make a move. But there's other coins which are going to outperform this thing hands down this cycle and probably the next cycle, right? But for me, the more important thing I want you to take away from this is I've found a new oil. I found the oil that's going to run the banking system. Let's say I found the US dollar. I found the new US dollar within the next 30 years. Great. As long as I execute that properly, just one, my great-grandchildren will never need money again, right? That same thing is happening all over crypto. All over crypto. Ethereum is like a new internet that's been released. So it literally allows you to build apps on top. Okay, so if you just learn about that and you execute that properly, fantastic. Generational wealth. DeFi is the next stage of finance. Finance, which holds all the money in the world. Okay, if you just execute that properly, you're good. There's so many opportunities. So now we just said the internet's being reinvented, the US dollar's being reinvented, all of finance is being reinvented, file storage is being reinvented. I can't name, every single thing around you is being reinvented. So don't miss the forest for the trees. Don't think I'm just looking at these tokens, I'm just gonna make a bit of dollars and I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna go do things with my dollars. You completely missed the point of this thing. Accrue these assets, because these assets will infinitely inflate against the value of those worthless currencies that we're used to working with. And once you have the assets, you'll be able to generate debt against those assets for the rest of your life while they keep accruing up in dollar denominated value. Like, what did Michael Saylor do? Michael Saylor is a very shrewd businessman, very intelligent gentleman. He actually lost 98% of his wealth in the dot-com bubble. And then he came back from that. But he realized his company has $500 million, had $500 million of cash, right? And he was going out and trying to impress Wall Street and say, look how good my company is. And his stock was like stagnant. It wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't getting investment. And then he thought like, well, we have no debts and we have $500 million of cash. Why does nobody give a shit about us? And then when he realized that, oh, they're printing money like it's going out of style, that $500 million of cash is now worth $300 million today, if you just held on to it. And in a year from now, it's going to be worth 25% less. But 10 years from now, it's going to be worth less than 10% of its value. So it's going to be worth $50 million. So he's going to lose $490 million in the next 10 years by holding cash. And he realized that. So then he said, okay, wait, so you're telling me these dollars is going to become worthless. So why don't I borrow those dollars today And why don't I put them into assets which are going to accrue value at a way faster rate than the dollars are going to diminish. Now, do not remortgage your house and go buy this, okay? Like if you do that, you're taking an insane amount of risk. This is the complete wild, wild west where the regulation could come out and kill this whole market, not kill it, but crush it and do something to it, which is completely unforeseen. So I'm not saying you should do this right now. He's smart enough that he had no debts. He had a cash generating business. He had cash that was burning a hole through the floor for him. And so what he did is he took the $500 million last year and put it into Bitcoin. And then he turned around to his investors and went, we need to generate more debt. So he leveraged the company and he generated now $6.5 billion of debt. Not 6.5 billion, he actually generated, I think it was $3.5 billion of debt, and now it's worth $7 billion of Bitcoin. But he generated billions and billions of dollars of debt against his company at whatever 0.25% that he can borrow. And then he went and bought Bitcoin, which performs at 200% per year on average for the last few years, last 10 years. And then, so what he done was he realized, I'm going to leave the banking system de facto, and I'm going to go buy an asset which will infinitely inflate against the value. Now, it's going to go up and then it's going to go down, but it's still going to be way more valuable than it was before. Then it's going to go up and it's going to go down. It's going to be way more valuable than before. And if this is an exponential curve that we're following, even if you just held it through that whole process, his company is not going to lose value. His company is going to become one of the most valued companies out there. As soon as he did that, Wall Street saw, hey, this guy is a way for us to invest in Bitcoin because they're holding the Bitcoin. So if I invest in them, their value goes up. So his value shot through the roof. As soon as he realized that, guess what the rest of the titans of industry asked? They were like, how do I do that? How do I do exactly that? And so many of them, there was a conference less than a year ago where he laid out the entire plan and explained this to people in a deep way, and explained the CEOs of companies in a deep way. But it also, those companies take a year to get their ducks in a row, because this isn't a simple process. It's a very complicated process for a publicly owned or privately owned company to be able to buy these assets. But after about a year, they're ready. They got their money. There's 50 million companies out there that are potential customers for crypto and investing in crypto. And they're just getting started with Bitcoin, with a little bit of Ethereum, with some chain link here and there, with like a few of them that are really risky are willing to do that. So you are there before all of them. You are there before all of them. And when their money flows into this market, within the next 4 years, the adoption phase is going to happen, and within the next 8 years, it's going to complete. You know how you're like, I feel like I'm late? Oh my God. It's like you're late to the internet in 1997, right? Now, if you were early to the internet in 1997, you went through 2000, the year 2000, where you know, Michael Saylor lost 98%, or looked like he lost 98% of his value. And then you have to recover from there. Amazon lost 98% of its value, and then it became one of the biggest companies in the world, right? So there are going to be these volatility phases, which are baked into the cake, but you are now investing in assets, which if you can either somehow figure out a way to make sure that you can exit the market and re-enter the market and time it so that when the crashes happen, you're out, or you're buying assets which just survive through that whole process, it's a no-brainer for you to make generational wealth. But now those two sentences, this one sentence I said is like easier iterated than executed, right? Because in that dump process, what it's going to look like, if you're holding it, what it's going to look like is, oh my God, everything I put into this is lost, right? And most people don't have the constitution to be able to deal with that. And that's why I'm accruing, like I make my profits and I just put it into this one thing. Like, I don't care where it goes. I'm buying it for the ripples. I'm buying it for the XR ripples. I'm buying it for the XRP, right? Ripples is a classic way of saying it. Because I know no matter what happens, it's actually the only one that I've done enough research on that I can guarantee is going to be here 100 years from now, right? So that's my strategy. Make the money in the market and then secure it in an asset which I know is going to survive a long time. I'll still sell the Ripple, you know, the XRP. I'll still, you know, once I see the market going to a certain level and things are overheated, I'm out. I'm not married to it. But so I'm kind of creating a blend of this strategy of, once I see some kind of peaks, I exit even that one and I let it crash and then I get back in. At worst, I let it come back to where the value, where the signal is there for me to get back into the market, and I get back and ride the next leg up, right? So think about what you're buying. If you're buying, what was that, Squid Game, because you saw a show on TV, then try to find the sucker in the room. And there's a great quote that if you can't find the sucker in the room, then you're the sucker, right? That's a really good way of looking at crypto, that most people lose money in crypto. Statistically speaking, in a market, most people, like mathematically speaking, most people have to lose money in order for some people to get rich. So if you're playing the game of I'm here to get rich and I'm putting my money into stuff that I don't have a thesis around, and it's maybe outside of your genius zone, the floor is about to get wiped with your money. And those rich people who are going to enter, they know how to take your money. There's a reason why they have it and you don't. It's because their job is to take your money, right? And they don't have emotions and you do. So the reason why I wanted to present this was there's this way of looking at things. I'm not saying go buy Ripple. If you just go buy Ripple because I'm saying it, then you just did not listen to the last 5 minutes of what I just said. Invest in stuff because it's something that you're willing to get involved in for a long period of time. You went into a room and researched DeFi for months on end, and then you got involved in it. Great. Now that's like your genius zone. You're gonna participate. Some's gonna be good. Some's gonna be bad. But over time, you're gonna be one of the experts that started off in that game before everybody gets there, right? So if you then run that calculation over the next 10 years, no matter what regulations come out, no matter what stuff happens, you're gonna be a sharpened tool by the time this thing goes fully live by the 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So pick your stuff, because otherwise there's too much opportunity. Oil's being reinvented, internet's being reinvented, banking's being reinvented, supply chain's being reinvented, everything's being reinvented. And if you're like, I'll just get a little bit of everything, you're not going to be. Yeah. In my experience, those people don't end up anywhere because they didn't become geniuses in anything. And in the end, the most valuable thing that you can invest in is yourself. And if you're investing in these things as like little vehicles to make you more dollars and put it back into your bank account, go watch my talk from last week, because your bank account's about to keep all your money, legally speaking, and they're authorized to do that, and you signed on the dotted line to allow them to do that. And in the end, what did you do? You made a bunch of money, you put it into a bank that the bank took, and then how much value did you accrue? Are you any more valuable? Did you learn anything? Did you become an expert in anything that allows, even if you're like Michael Saylor, you lose 98% of your portfolio, doesn't matter. He's a genius. Comes back to build one of the biggest companies out there, right? So think about it like that. How am I investing? That's why I asked, what's your reason for investing? Yeah, we all want to get rich. That one goes without saying. Everybody here is trying to make money, right? But if that's the only reason you're here, you're one of the you're in a 1 million person crowd and you're not standing out at all. And the statistics say you're probably going to lose money. So pick stuff that you really drill down deep into. Get involved. Invest in yourself and teach yourself these things. And now, any questions, please? So tell us about this event tonight in America. I'll just repeat the question. It's an event, a yearly event that happens for Ripple. It's called Swell. It's an event where they bring in many different partners, and they actually release news about what is potentially what's happened in the last year, and potentially what's going to happen going forward. So it's a positive news event. Fundamentally speaking, it's something that usually gives some wind in the sails of Ripple. But I don't know what it's going to do. It might go up, it might go down. I couldn't care less, because I know, as an investment, Bitcoin was at 20,000 last peak, and now it's at what, 67, and people are projecting it to go to 100 or 200 or 300, whatever. That's at least 3x of where it's been before, right? Ripple was at, or XRP was at $3.80, depending on which exchange you check, and today it's at $1 something. And if I just apply the most basic version of what we just saw happen with Bitcoin, that puts it at around $12-ish, somewhere around there. So that's like I don't want to say guaranteed, but that's a huge return risk to reward ratio for me. And I like buying assets which aren't doing anything. Everybody likes assets that are doing stuff. You know, you wanted Solana when it wasn't doing anything, so you could ride through when it is doing something, and by now you're out. During this court case, Ripple has outperformed Bitcoin. This year, even with a court case against it, even with no exchanges that can buy it, it's done better than Bitcoin, right? And that's once the floodgates open and the actual court case ends. And like my thing is always, you know, the world doesn't work the way that we're told that it works. If they're telling you to look here, you should naturally look the exact opposite direction.
It does more transactions than Ethereum. And when I said about the big moves, Ripple has been, obviously Bhutan is one of them, etc., etc. So in the background, Ripple itself has been making big moves all around the world, getting the right connections, trying to, you know, to them the court case is nothing. It's not even a part of whatever they're doing. I mean,
beneficial.
Yeah, yep.
Securities and Exchange Commission, the
SEC.
US is the US government.
Yes. So, some of us, I mean, conspiracy theorists, I mean, believe that this is just a farce. You know, it's just to keep that price down, to make you believe that it's not worth anything, or whichever the case. Put your money in everything else. When you lose your money, that's your problem.
That's actually a great point to come up with. I just said, you know, if they tell you to look here, look there, when they try to scare me away from stuff, I'm an old school. I was here back in the Mount Gox days. You know, like we were in Bitcoin, it was going nuts. It just did 600x, right? And everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is the craziest thing we've ever seen ever in history." And then they released the news. Guess what? The exchange got hacked. The main exchange where you guys are buying this got hacked, and it just falls off of a cliff. And everybody's like, "Oh well, that was it. I knew it was a bubble. I knew it was going to explode. I knew this thing's going to zero. It's worthless." And we were all like, there's no way they let like a new form of money just exist. Like they've pretty much killed everybody who's tried to create a new form of money before. Like you think they're just going to let you create the new version of the decentralized version of the US dollar? It's done. And people forgot about it. But Bitcoin went during that process, Bitcoin went from cents to dollars, to multiple dollars, right? And then the next time, in 2017, it ran up again. And it went from dollars to $20,000. And we're like, bubble again. It's a bubble again. This thing's going to zero. And then they released news, the futures started trading for Bitcoin. Everybody was like, oh, futures, that's going to be great. But it was actually the opposite. And it fell off of a cliff. And everybody's like, going to zero. But it went from hundreds of dollars to $3,000, even after the crash, right? Now we all wisened up. And we're like, this has happened twice. It went from cents to thousands of dollars already. We're gonna get on this ship and we're not getting off. I now went from $3,000 or 2,000 something, whatever, $3,000 up to $60,000, right? So we're like, I'm not getting off. So you know what they need? They need like massive things to scare the shit out of us, because they know like 30% drops, nobody even skips their coffee for that anymore. 50% drop in May still didn't shake most of the people. 78% of the supply is still held in diamond hands just for Bitcoin. So what they do for things like Ripple is they go like, let's scare them early. Let's put something on there which shakes out these retail people early, because we don't want we want the institutions to get in here and their bags to actually run this thing up, because they're the ones who are going to need to own it. Because if it's an asset that is going to run the global economy, and I just said that there's two worlds that are going to exist. There's going to be the central bank digital currency world, which the plebs, us, are going to be allowed to operate in, where we can't accrue wealth. And then there's the asset world, which the institutions and wealthy and elites are going to be allowed to operate it in. There's no way they want us to go buy the assets which they're planning on running the stuff with, right? So they come up with these things to scare us and be like, run away from it. You know, and that's what the lawsuit is. And when you actually look at the details of the lawsuit, it was actually technically, it's looking like it's actually Ripple suing the US government to be like, your system sucks. So now they've won everything, and it's being proven through and through that the US's regulatory system is garbage, and that Ripple is going to be given regulatory clarity. By the time that happens, everybody's going to be busy buying Squid Games, and when it does move, when it does whatever it wants to do, they're going to do it so fast, so most people won't have time to get on the ship. And by the time everybody gets on, then they're going to dump it. So people are going to be like, it's a shitcoin, right? They don't. How can our American friends buy it? I can buy it on Binance. You're American? Yeah, Canadians can buy it. How do our American friends buy it? Pause the recording for a second. So Americans don't buy it, right? That's what we just discussed. What was the question?
So the question is not what?
So Matthias asked, isn't the event gonna be sell the news first? XRP is up 25% recently.
Could be, almost certainly could be. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised
if that's the case. Yeah, that's what he just said. Yeah, buy the rumor, sell the news, right? So almost certainly could be. I couldn't care less. Sorry, release date for Bitcoin happening soon? What is it? Oh, right. So Bitcoin is from the Mt. Gox case is now going to be released to investors, and potentially could cause some selling pressure on the market. Great. Another piece of news to scare us into getting rid of the Bitcoin. Right? Yeah, it'll shake it. Might go up and down. At this point, like, you know, there's confirmation that, and there's going to be corrections. The whole point is that Bitcoin goes through corrections, right? But the next leg of this market, for me, I have complete confirmation is here. It might go through a correction and then go. I don't give a shit. That's great, because then I really get to deploy all my money into that process, right? Throw all my dry powder at it. So I've been sitting on it for a while. But the next leg is here. And then when you look at the macro thing, okay, these institutions, they can't invest just like us. They don't just pull money out of the bank and move $100 billion into something. They have to go through quarters. Each quarter and each year they can invest certain things. That's why at the beginning of this quarter, you saw all this institutional flow, which pumped up Bitcoin, and then it kind of just chilled out, just calmed down, right? In my approximation, in my thesis, we still have a few more quarters of institutional investment to go for this market to run. Because if you're printing that much money, you don't have 4 years to get it out of the bank. 4 years means you're 80% below. You lost 80% of your purchasing power, and these institutions know that. So they have to get in there now, like this cycle, this year, maybe within the next few years, right? So if the idea was given to them last year, and it takes them about a year to get their ducks in a row, that means this year, by the end of this year, they're fully ready, and their investors are like, okay, let's get the hell out of this sinking ship called the traditional economy, and let's get into digital assets. Which means, and Raoul Paul makes a great point about this, that it's likely that they're going to make us think this thing ends in December. There would be a correction into December, which people would think of as like the end, because, you know, it's always ended in December before, or so we think. It actually ended in November one of the years. But then they would come in with their big bags in January and buy it up. And then in April, they'd do it again, right? So it makes perfect sense that there's all these news that are primed for, you know, it's going to go to zero, it's going to go to this and that. But now we're smart enough that like that process isn't going to play out the same way. Yeah, exactly. The investor, the institutional grade investors, they're going to take profits right before the end of the year, because that, again, for tax reasons. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's okay. So can you speak to the sister coin, which is Stellar Lumens? So that's a good point. So I'm not saying everything is going to be Ripple, you know, even though I just said everything is going to be Ripple. It's one big part. It's the one that services. Remember, we started off with saying that the world is, the money moves on rails. Right now, the rails are this correspondent banking system that moves money between different corresponding banks that are holding big chunks of money in these countries. And it moves through SWIFT, it moves through ACH, and it moves through a couple other modalities, but SWIFT and ACH are two of the biggest. So Ripple is the new rails. It's the new, faster, more efficient rails without people involved. And actually, just before I forget the side point, we're building Skynet. We're building the thing where people are no longer going to be necessary. Jobs are not going to be a thing. They don't need us anymore. People are the problem. So cryptocurrency is here to get rid of those people. You notice Bitcoin doesn't have people, doesn't have offices, doesn't have entities. As a matter of fact, the removal of people is the most important thing about Bitcoin. The same thing's happening with all these processes around you. Pay attention to that, because you're one of the people that's being removed. So sorry. What we were saying was that the removal of the people is the Ripple rails, right? But there are different use cases for moving value that Ripple doesn't serve. Because remember, it's custom built and fitted. So unless you have a central bank, unless you have banking partners, unless you have very specific roles filled, it can't run, right? So XLM or Stellar is a currency that's created by the same guy who actually created Ripple initially, or XRP initially, Jed McCaleb. It is also one. I still have to look up it. I think it's certified for ISO. No, ISO. It's not ISO 20002 certified yet, but it is built to not require the central banks and the bank. You know, it does allow banking transactions to happen in a more open manner, but it'll still come to a point where it'll have to interact with the banking system. So, you know, it's another currency that isn't custom built to serve the use cases of the banking system, but it has its own place in certain use cases. You know, the same way like XDC, which is Corda, is a currency that's built as, so Corda is a technology that's built as an interoperability layer, because, you know, we said there are these rails with assets on them, which the wealthy are allowed to touch. Not even wealthy, the bankers and the elites are allowed to touch, and institutions are allowed to touch. But then there's this world over here where, you know, us plebs are actually creating the prosperity in the economy through currencies. And you need something in between to translate value back and forth. So that you need interoperability layers, right? So Corda is the technology that allows interoperability, but in a private manner where it's not publicly visible. And XDC is the token that can make that happen. So that would be like businesses, people. We don't fully understand the use cases, but it's sitting in between the rails and the currency system. XLM would kind of sit parallel and would serve certain use cases which it's authorized to do, but it's not going to take over what Ripple's doing. And they can't have the on-demand liquidity pool in the middle. They don't have a pool of money sitting in the middle for them to do large transfers. Algorand is a token that is another interoperability layer that's going to be hooked up into the system that allows publicly viewable transactions to happen. And these interoperability layers are interoperable because they can trigger smart contracts on blockchains. What I need is something that allows me to, because I don't care if you sent me the money on the Ethereum ERC20. Like, the reason why most people don't give a shit about crypto right now is because you have to get them involved in the technical stuff, which nobody cares about. You know, I just want to send the damn money. I don't care if you use Solana to do it. I don't care if you, whatever. The reason why we don't have that right now is because there isn't anything that's creating interoperability between the banking system and the blockchains and then converting it on the other side and sending it forward. So to answer your question, XLM is one of the rails that will be used in certain use cases. The interoperability layers will allow the blockchains to be triggered automatically. So when somebody needs to transact value in whichever blockchain they need, it'll automatically trigger Ethereum, and it'll automatically trigger another smart contract on the other side to do whatever they need to do, and then it'll connect back to the banking system without any people touching it, right? So this interledger protocol sits in between the ledgers. The interoperability layers are kind of like interledger. They're interledger protocols too that actually operate between the different ledgers, including banks and cryptocurrencies. Then we're seeing an overledger system develop that is another way of connecting them together, but instead of connecting the endpoints that interact with the world, they are ones that interact between the blockchains without even interacting with the world. If all of this sounds like it's getting a little too over your head, welcome to the Skynet that we're building. But at least one that I know of is Quant. Quant is an overledger protocol that's meant to connect all the different ledgers together and allow them to transact and move value back and forth without people being involved in the process. Then there's an underledger protocol network that's being developed. And that's no surprise where the US Army and the entities which want to operate in ways where they don't want to allow us to be able to understand or participate in it is being developed. DAG is a protocol that I know of as an underledger protocol that is going to be, it's going to be running things which could be completely secretive. Okay, so there's this sandwich of value that's being developed that is going to be, so that whole thing is going to at the ends connect to the banking system, and that banking system is going to be the one that runs on the ISO 20022 now messaging language. But the private sovereign ownership of assets and banks is a very limited time thing. It's about to disappear 100%. In order for this new system to go live, in order for this value to be able to move in, seamlessly across everywhere, your bank needs to disappear. Your bank needs to be nationalized, and it's coming. Your banks are going to be nationalized. Your bank account is going to be nationalized. It's going to be controlled by a central bank. That's why they call it central bank digital currencies. And you will only be allowed to spend in the world those currencies. And if you have assets, like we're doing right now, you'll be allowed to generate, because they're just printing those currencies, you'll be allowed to generate as many of those currencies as you like. But if you are in a system which does not agree with their regulatory landscape, which most of crypto today does not, they're not going to let you operate in the world. You're going to become black market, and it's not going to be allowed. That's why all these privacy coins that people think are like the future, and we're going to use those to be able to transact value, and that's going to be a secret way for us to do it. You're going to effectively become a black market person to do all that stuff. So, pardon? There's a lot of money to be made on the black market. I just would rather make it on the same market that the wealthy are making it, and then put it into the system and hold it in assets which they're planning on taking off my hands, and I'm not selling it. I'm going to sell it, but if I see a peak and try to buy it lower, which is, arguable if I'll be able to do that well, but at least I'm going to buy back into the price that I left at. But those assets are probably going to be the ones that they eventually take off of me, because they'll make it illegal for me to own, right? But the black market makes the most amount of money, and the most amount of money that moves through the black market actually moves through the banking system, right? So they actually need modalities for them to do that, right?
So that's the biggest risk is the regulatory risk. What is your take on that?
The governments will crack down hard to try to maybe just go with one as XRP, or
Governments will do everything in their power
To get you to get rid of 1,000 different assets, and probably eventually millions of different assets, which are going to be used to build that new system. And I'm not saying XRP is going to be the only one, not by a long shot. Today we have, there's at least 100 assets which we can see, which are already regulatorily cleared-ish. Because when you just do the deep analysis on it, you can see it's built by the people who actually control the regulators. Regulators are nothing more than money interests controlling each regulator. So yes, the biggest short-term risk I see to cryptocurrency for us, for the wild Westerners, is that they're gonna bring regulation. So we've discussed these risks before, but here are some of the biggest risks. Tether. 60% of the transactions in cryptocurrencies is done on Tether. The actual value of crypto is inflated using tethers. So when they decide to make Tether illegal, which they're going to for sure, or the debt collapse in China comes due and actually shows that Tether is backed by Chinese debt, that is going to be one of the things that they use to scare us into getting rid of crypto. Oh my God, it's all backed by nothing. It's going to zero. Same old story again. Regulatory clarity is going to be one of the things that they use to scare us out of crypto. And actually, that's one of the things that I see killing over 95% of cryptos that exist today, right? Simply because that needs to happen in order for the real the real implementation of blockchain hasn't even started. This world you're living in, we used to live in, the old normal, is on its way out. And the new normal is going to be one that's built on blockchain. So the real adoption hasn't even started. In order for the real adoption to start within the next 4 years, most of these old ones need to die. They're going to put them through a regulatory wall, which kind of like what they did with the US. They were like, we are not planning on outlawing crypto. And everybody going, yeah, let's get in. And then they're like, and we're going to release a law that makes it a felony for you to participate in large chunks of it. But we're not making the crypto illegal. We're just making your activities illegal unless you're one of the big boys. So that same kind of dynamic is going to play out across the world, where they're going to say, we support innovation, but we kill off parts of it that don't agree with the bigger plan that we're coming with. Now, when we're saying, they're going to convince us to sell the crypto, remember, when you're selling, somebody's buying on the other side. And they're the ones who are going to be buying, because regulatory clarity is the single greatest thing that can happen to crypto. Because when regulatory clarity happens, then the hundreds of trillions of dollars of institutional flow finally arrives in crypto, because they don't come to things unless there's regulatory clarity, right? So for me, I'm looking at it as a positive, but there's going to be people who don't understand that that's happening, who are going to think, oh my God, this is the end. They're outlawing stuff and all that stuff, and they're going to run from it. Now, 95% of assets in crypto, in my approximation, will go to zero that exist today. Most of them, 60% will go to zero just because they're scams, or they're just shit coins, or they're coins that have pie in the sky ideas, but they don't have teams that can execute. That's why I'm more interested in the 5% who are going to survive, and out of the 5%, I want like the 0.01% that I can just close my eyes and go to sleep knowing my wealth is sitting there. Regulatory problems, Tether's chickens coming home to roost. What was the other three that we discussed? Oh, banking system collapse. Because as soon as your bank shut down, people are going to panic. They're going to try to sell their crypto to try to use it. Stock market crash. All these things are external factors that are going to temporarily cause problems in crypto. But for me, I look at them as the most beneficial, because I'm all out of the banking system. I sit on a decent bit of cash. And at that point, if I see a great buying opportunity, I might get rid of some of my XRP and go buy something else if there's something that's fantastic for me to buy. So each one of those things look like they're problems unless you're ready and poised for them, in which case they're solutions.
Another question. So here on primary cryptocurrencies, because traditionally we value companies, it's revenue streams.
Exactly.
So how to decide maybe it's overvalued or undervalued?
So we've done a whole meeting about this. Yeah, how do you value cryptocurrencies, and how do you know something's overvalued or undervalued, or something's valuable? So we've done a whole talk about this. Please make sure you go back and watch it, but I'll just give a quick overview. These are networks that you're valuing. The network's value is tied to the number of users that are using it, the use case that it serves, and the potential that will actually get to the point of execution. Today, they're in speculative phase, all of them. So there's insane amounts of speculation, which is driving up the value. That's not how I like to invest in things. That doesn't make me valuable as an investor. So I look at, what does it do? Is it the best one at doing that? As a matter of fact, is it the only one that's the best at doing that? How many people are doing it? There's some metrics where, like for DeFi, it's pretty easy. You go look up SushiSwap. It's valued at $1.5 billion, yet there's $7 billion of money sitting on it, so it's 7 times undervalued, right? So and then who's running it? That's what we just did with Ripple. What partnerships do they have? And what's my time horizon? Am I investing in this because I want to make money today? In which case, that's not even a game that I play. Am I investing in it for the next 4 years? In which case, what's coming in the next 4 years? And are they going to execute? That's kind of how we evaluate, but we go into much more detail on the value meeting. Yeah.
You have an idea when the lawsuit is written?
Right now, do I have an idea of when the lawsuit against Ripple will end? It'll end between now and 10 years from now. I'm just kidding. So there's the longest that it can take right now is probably end of Q1 of 2022. The way things are looking right now, because the discovery phase has been extended until January, and potentially to close off some of the arguments could go a little bit longer, right? Lawsuits don't end in one way. Lawsuits can end in settlement. They can end in the actual lawsuit being decided on, or they can end in capitulation from one of the sides, right? So, and there's more ways. I'm not a lawyer, but like those are general ways of doing it. When you look at the people who write the settlements, this is how much of a nerd I am. Nerd out on like, who are the people writing the settlements for these guys? They've already written a settlement that was rejected by Ripple, between the SEC and Ripple, because they said, no, we want regulatory clarity for Ripple. And until you agree to that, we're not going to settle with you. What that tells me is, if I'm in a lawsuit and that's the kind of leverage that I'm using, then I know I've won the lawsuit 100%, right? So that first draft was rejected. There's a second draft being drafted. We don't know when that gets sent. We don't know if that gets rejected. So that's why I say between now and end of Q1. And for me, I don't care, because I'm willing to hold this. Like, what I love about assets that don't do anything for a long period of time is because, like, the longer they go sideways, the higher that they go up. Like 2017 was the best example. Ripple did nothing. It was one of the worst assets you could hold the whole time. People were going to like other stuff that was like, you know, 5x, 7x, 10x. We were like, I made 10x, Ripple made 0. And then it just went nothing, nothing, nothing. And then it went 360x. And then it went 70, 80% of its value gone, right? So if you were patient enough to get to that point, you actually benefited from it. But if you're not, then, I mean, I'm patient enough to wait 10 years for this thing to come to fruition, because as far as I'm concerned, I've already made my money. This is a place for me to like save it. And if we can multiply it 10 times, you guys probably won't see me again. You know what I mean? Any other questions? That's not going to be anything. When you actually look at quantum computing, like quantum computers coming online to break a blockchain, sure, you could apply enough computing power to break the cryptography, but then we have quantum proof cryptography. So all you have to do is just apply a layer of quantum proof cryptography on top, especially with blockchain, with Bitcoin. They're saying, oh, they could just guess your private key. Okay, well, so then you just come up with a technique of like layering something else on top, kind of like lightning layers on top of Bitcoin. And I mean, obviously that would have to be implemented on blockchains, and most of them will not survive because they won't have the wherewithal to apply it. Maybe the technology is not right for it, but like it's not as big of an issue as it seems, right? But we're about to have quantum computers in our pockets by 2030. Yeah, they're actually going to be in glasses that are put onto our heads because the metaverse is coming. Yeah, it's already here, right? Which is another great point. This whole value accrual system is not for this world. Don't get it twisted. This world is done. It's over. We're leaving this world. There's a better world being built. Better world being built, quote unquote, called the metaverse. It's where our kids are going to live. It's where most of the business in the world is going to happen. It's where humans are going to go, because they're sick of you traveling everywhere, and they're sick of you wanting to get villas and Ferraris. And okay, I'll give you everything. Put these glasses on. Put on the glasses. You're sitting in a villa. You're in Hawaii without going there. Okay, you can sit in your little cubicle that we give you because you will own nothing and you'll be happy. We'll let you live in a cubicle, and we'll give you money to use as a central bank digital currency because you don't have any assets because we, inflated them all away for you. But you got to live in this metaverse, okay? And I always bring up this patent, the patent 2020606060. Yes, it has 666 in it. I love that. It's a Microsoft patent on human activity being on the blockchain, which means it can track exactly what humans are doing physically, and it pays you according to the right execution of that movement. When I'm saying this blockchain is coming for every single thing that you do, that's the level of granularity I'm saying is coming. As an electronics engineer, it's a fact. Exactly. But now you're just going to do it in a metaverse, right? And you're going to have to make sure you stay within the lines, and you don't want to get your social credit score ruined, Yeah, exactly. So, but that new world is being built. Now, somebody looks at that and goes, oh, that's terrible. I look at that and go, wow, what a great opportunity. I want to be at the forefront of this metaverse. I want to have the value transaction systems that are going to be used in the metaverse, which is these magical cryptos that we're talking about. I want decentralized land. I want decentralized finance, decentralize everything, and like give me pieces, because I want to be ready for that world. So now Like, I have a weed company in Canada and I'm leaving it because I'm like, you guys are selling weed. That's old school shit. And they're like, dude, you know how much money's in weed? Canada just legalized weed. Drugs are like the second biggest industry in the world. But I can see like, that's an old school way of thinking, that you're going to be selling a product to people against mega corporations who are going to come and wipe the floor with you. So like I'm leaving my physical businesses, even the most profitable ones, to go to the digital businesses which exist in the ether, which there's nothing to touch, you know? That's a really good question. That is a fantastic, the question is, how will people smoke weed in the metaverse? They won't need to. The moment I can control your brainwaves, why do you need weed? I can put you in, I'm not looking forward to it, I'm building a farm. Remember, I'm building a farm, pulling my own energy, pulling out my own water, and I'm gonna hire somebody to access the metaverse for me. No, I've been as an investor, as an electronics engineer, I've been watching the pieces of this build. I used to build the chips for fun that they're putting in people's arms, right? And I've been studying that technology for like 15 years, waiting for it to come to fruition. I've been studying graphene for so long, for like almost 15 years, waiting for it to come to fruition. Messed up part was the first thing that they launched with it is something that you inject people with, and it's like, that's a little beyond what I thought they were going to do. But there is an excitement around the fact that there is this blue ocean that nobody even understands is going on. It's like the internet is being reinvented, but more like the entire physical world is being reinvented, and most people don't even notice that that's what's going on in front of them, right? Where I'm the guy sitting there like, wow, I thought this was going to happen for 15 years I've been waiting for this to happen and training for it. Now it's finally coming to fruition, and I have a knowledge set that's going to allow me to prosper in that world. Yeah, we're building the matrix, and we're being jacked into the matrix, and we're all right now building the Skynet. So it's like Terminatrix, right? I can. I love you, Indonesia. I will speak to Indonesia all my life. I love this place. There's a reason why I'm here, because in predicting what was coming, I had to look for a place which would be the best place for my grandkids to be alive. And I don't even plan on having children. For other people's grandkids to be alive, for me to help them prosper, right? When you want to live in a place, you want to look at the future growth potential of that country, because countries go through growth and senile stages, right? You need a demographic of the population that's young. Indonesia, one of the top 3 places that are going to grow within the next 30 to 40 years. China, India, Indonesia, 3 of the biggest countries in the world. I don't want to live in China. I'm Indian and I don't even want to go back to China, India. Okay, so like Indonesia, I was like, okay, most of Indonesia, no thank you. Bali, the crown jewel of the entire world, the place that rates higher than Paris and Rome on places people want to visit, was like a no-brainer for me to come here. Monetarily speaking, Indonesia is a place that loves cash. They're gonna, they also, people think that means they hate cryptocurrency. No, they love the blockchain. We're trying to lobby the government on implementing the blockchain. They're on board with that stuff. They like corruption. So that needs to happen in cash. So when you look at the details of what Indonesia is doing with these new systems, central bank digital currencies, and the financial regulatory landscape that's being created, Indonesia is like taking they're keeping a distance from it because they want to keep their old system, which for me means we have time. We have 10 to 15 years before that system fully gets integrated into here. Of course, for global commerce, you're going to be playing this game, but I have some time. This place is, the system here is built in a way so that the system is built to take care of the small guy first. Contrary to what a lot of people believe, the Banjar system is built so that the voice of the people in the village matters more than the top, which is the exact opposite of the US and the West. In the world that we come from, that other system was the most prosperous because the top could like make decisions which would change the wealth of nations, and the nations would get wealthy or poor according to that. The world that's coming is a decentralized world. So Indonesia is pre-decentralized. So the village can function on its own, and the regency can pretty much function on its own, and the island can function on its own-ish, And the country then has last say in what they want all of them to do, right? So when in the world that we're living in, you want that, right? And then finally, tsunamis, earthquakes, dengue, volcanoes, and bugs trying to murder you, right? And COVID. You know, to them, they're like, oh, what, a cough? Pussies, right? So when there's and then there are these karmic people who are, especially in Bali, who are these amazing people who actually are really reticent to adopt technology and get to a point where they can leapfrog most of the Western world. All of that stuff coming together made me leave one of the best opportunities I've had in Canada, which was supposed to be one of the best countries in the world, right before COVID, and lock myself down here. And it couldn't have been a better decision. Now, that decision was based on this conspiracy theorist view of the world. You know, that was the biggest decision that I ever made, and it's the best decision I've ever made. And then all the crazy shit I used to believe came true. Like they're gonna shut down the world. You know the crazy shit that I think. I'm not even gonna voice it here, but all the crazy shit that's going around you, we knew it was coming. We knew it was gonna happen. I could show you videos from 2009 and 2008 that we were watching that said exactly this was going to happen exactly the way that it did. So when all that shit comes true and I'm here, then all the other crazy shit I believe is what I've just voiced. It's what Chance was saying. It's what everybody knows, is that the world that we live in is gonna collapse. It's a planned collapse. You're in the middle of it. It's gonna happen within the next 4 years. Stock market is gonna crash within the next 18 months. Banking system is gonna collapse within the next 5 years. And the US dollar is gonna die within the next 15 years. I love it. I'm in Indonesia. I'm completely out of the banking system. I couldn't care less about stocks. All of the money from stocks is going to flow into this world. And then there's a whole new universe being built that I understand the fundamentals of exactly how it works, where most people can't even fathom what's actually coming. So so become the expert in that new world and stay in Indonesia. Stay in Bali alone. Maybe we have 4 or 5 years. Like in my approximation, that new banking system isn't going to be fully alive and ready for the switchover until somewhere 2023, 2024 minimum. By 2025, it'll be fully locked up. So before November of 2025, it is going to happen, because in order for them to transition to this world that we just spoke about, this banking system, you need to hit I agree. Because remember, they are nothing. They have to convince us that we are going to give our sovereignty and our financial independence over to them. Yeah. If you took a vaccine that is a genetic modification vaccine, human rights law says you're not considered a human anymore because you're a transhuman, and you're also property of the corporation. That's international law. So those people are not gonna. They're gonna have certain issues going forward. Unless you have wealth. Unless you're wealthy. In which case you're very human. We're going to consider you like you get all the stuff. You get to fly everywhere. You know, PPKM happens and you can come in on your private jet and pay $18,000 for a visa, and you can enter right in the middle of a lockdown, no problem. And you can go to the private islands on a yacht and leave. I know people who did that, while the average person can't come in to have death that they're coming to. Right? So that's the dark reality of what we're facing. Protect your wealth. Protect your wealth. Don't lose your wealth, and you're going to be just fine. And the opportunity to accrue insane levels of generational wealth is happening right in front of you. You're not late. You're actually before the 99%, before 50 million companies that want to do it, before sovereign wealth funds that control the wealth of nations are looking to put their quadrillions of dollars into this process, right? Just don't lose your wealth. Yeah. Thank you. I'll shut up now.